What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to take you guys through my own team selection going into the upcoming Game Week 2. After a pretty good Game Week 1, I'm pretty sure most of us should be looking at quite a high points tally for Game Week 1. I think that we're going to have a lot of hype going into Game Week 2, and hopefully it can be equally, if not better, of a Game Week. So if you guys are interested to see how I got in Game Week 1, then look at my transfer plan going into that deadline for Game Week 2, and then finally looking at my team selection. Sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So firstly, to start off these team selections like we usually do, I'm going to be going over the preceding Game Week, which is going to be Game Week 1 obviously, and we're talking about the players and the selection that I managed to have. It's always important before looking at the future that we just look back to the past for a little bit so we can just get some insights and maybe look at a player that potentially had a really good performance or maybe didn't live up to our expectations. So starting off with the defense, talking about kind of not living up to expectations, the defense was definitely the weak spot of my Game Week 1 team, and you can just see why. There wasn't a lot of returns in there besides the 2 clean sheets from Trent Alexander-Arnold and Tsimikas, which I was happy about. A little bit more happy about the Tsimikas clean sheet just because he is 4.0 million. But I'm not going to lie to you, I'm a little bit worried about Tsimikas for Game Week 2, not because Robertson is back in training. I'm not really worried about that. He simply is just running, getting that to kind of fitness up. I don't think he'll return for at least 2 game weeks time. But with Tsimikas in that Norwich game, if you guys did watch the fixture, I am a Liverpool fan, so I obviously did. You would have seen that towards the end of the game, I don't know why, maybe it was a fitness reason or something like that, but he completely lost his head and was making a few defensive mistakes that nearly Norwich managed to capitalize on. So I think we are quite lucky that Liverpool are facing Burnley this week, as I think if they were facing a team with maybe a better right winger, we would see that Tsimikas might be rotated. But I think he will be fine for one more game week against Burnley, and that's all we kind of need him for, because then they face Chelsea, and then I'm pretty sure after the international break, Andy Robertson will be back in the starting 11. With Trent, similar story there, though I thought that he was a little bit more defensively assured against Norwich, and I think from an attacking point of view, looks slightly better in my opinion, but I was kind of noting that Tsimikas was on a couple of set pieces, which is always going to be interesting because with Virgil van Dijk in that box or in and around that box on those set pieces, you always do have a chance of getting an assist. The other 2 players, Sanchez starting off Brighton, I don't know what really happened with them, but apparently in the first half they were not looking like a very good footballing team, and that's unfortunately where they managed to concede the goal against Burnley, and that's why he only has 2 points. As then in the second half, Brighton picked up the pace a little bit, and unfortunately that led to not too many save points for our goalkeeper Sanchez. We then go on to Luke Shaw with only 1 point after conceding a goal and also picking up a yellow card against Leeds. Now that Leeds game was a little bit of an interesting one. I unfortunately didn't watch it, but as far as I know, that game was a little bit open with United scoring 5 goals and then obviously Leeds getting 1 back. But a little bit disappointed maybe he didn't get a clean sheet, but I think if you were going to look at the fixtures, I guess Leeds was probably the least predictable clean sheet out of my starting defense. Now going on to the midfield where things heated up a bit. Not on the left-hand side of the team, unfortunately. We have Buendia and Gundogan both getting only 2 points. With Buendia, apparently he didn't play that well, which is a little bit of a pity because I thought that these opening 3 games for Aston Villa looked absolutely stellar, and I'm just hoping that they can pick it up maybe in the next 2. But against Watford, maybe a little bit of a surprise upset there with Watford winning 3-2, and unfortunately Buendia not being kind of involved in any of the 2 goals. But I do think it'll maybe take a little bit of time to adjust to that Aston Villa kind of playing style, and I really hope that it happens sooner than later so that he can manage to rack up some FPL points for our team. Gundogan against Spurs. Now I didn't really expect much out of Gundogan for this fixture, and we'll talk about Gundogan a little bit later on in the transfer plan, but with that Spurs fixture kind of went as to plan. Man City had a ton of possession, maybe not the most lethal in front of goal. They did have a couple of chances though to kind of go ahead, and then we have Spurs doing their favorite kind of counter attack, which we know that Spurs love to do. So it was a really predictable game. I guess the only unpredictable factor was almost Heung-min-Son scoring that out of the box lovely curler that managed to get Spurs the upset win. So nothing much to talk about with Gundogan. We are going to talk about him a lot later on, so I won't focus on him too much now, but we'll be focusing on our 2 essential premiums that managed to provide the FPL points this week. So we don't really see it too often with the 2 really premium assets returning quite highly. We have Fernandes on one side that managed to get 20 points, and then Mo Salah on the other that got 17. We did captain Mo Salah, as I'm pretty sure most people would have, so that's going to be 34 points from our captain, which I'll never turn down. Kind of any double-digit haul from a captain is going to be worth it in the long run, so I wasn't really having too much of a regret of not captaining Fernandes in Game Week 1, but it's going to be an interesting debate for Game Week 2 who we end up captaining. So both these 2 assets had really good games. I didn't necessarily think that Liverpool played that well overall, but I thought that Mo Salah looked quite sharp. And then with Fernandes, I think United basically scored every shot they took, which isn't something you see every single day. The final player we're going to talk about in that midfield is going to be Greenwood, and he had one shot and he scored one shot. But you know, with Greenwood, quite a clinical striker, although might not be the best finisher in the world, so I was really happy that he managed to get an attacking return. As long as he kind of matched Jota, that's all I wanted, because then I think Tsimikas plus Greenwood outperformed, maybe going for another 4.5 and Jota as that replacement. The forward line, our two essential forwards, Danny Ings and Antonio, both returned. Antonio a little bit unlucky there, missing the penalty. He also missed a little bit of a sitter coming off the crossbar or the post. Couldn't really see because it was quite a fast shot, but then they obviously got the penalty after that, which he didn't end up scoring anyways. So 100% I would have taken Antonio's points, but it could have always been more. But as FPL managers, we are sometimes a little bit greedy, so I'm not trying to be greedy too much for game week 1. The other player, Danny Ings, which was an absolute jammy pick here. I think he picked up a penalty in literally the last minute of stoppage time. As an owner, I'm always going to take that, but if you guys don't own him, I can understand you being a little bit salty about that one. On the bench, nothing much to talk about except for Ayling with 6 points. No, he didn't get a clean sheet. He actually ended up scoring Leeds' goal, which is going to be quite impressive, and hopefully he manages to keep up that scoring form for the upcoming game weeks. So when we kind of round up all these points, we managed to score a total of 101 points. So yes, we did manage to enter the 100 club in game week 1. I'm pretty sure most of you guys in the community, if you've been watching this channel, watching the preseason videos, you probably would have finished around that 100-point mark. If you didn't score about 100 points, no reason to kind of stress. I'm pretty sure you guys can make it up in the upcoming game weeks. But if you did, congratulations. But now let's get on to the transfer plan. So the transfer plan for game week 2 literally revolves around one man and one man only, and that's going to be Gundogan, the German Man City midfielder. So we did have news at the start of the week saying that he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. He's either sprained his shoulder, dislocated his shoulder, or something along those lines. But now we had news about Wednesday where they said he was back in training and it looked like he was training normally. It seems like the general consensus about the shoulder injury is that it's more of a kind of pain injury, and if he can manage to get through the pain, he can play as soon as possible. So whether that be Norwich, whether that be Arsenal next week, I'm going to hopefully wait till the press conferences tomorrow, and maybe Pep Guardiola by some miracle can give us some insight. Although he usually doesn't, maybe this week he will. And then if he's not going to make Norwich, I will probably be taking him out, just because if you watch my deadline stream and my kind of team selections, I was only going to pick Gundogan for literally game week 2 and game week 2 only when they do face Norwich at home. So if he's going to miss Norwich at home, no reason to kind of keep him, and then I'll look to ship him out to someone else. A little bit annoying that Ben Rama managed to kind of increase in price last night, because I think he was currently looking as my favorite option. But the thing about it with Gundogan is that even if there is a slither of hope that he's going to start against Norwich, I will be holding on to him because it is Norwich at home, and I honestly think that Man City can win this game about 12-0. So any kind of player that's going to start or come off the bench, I think is going to be worth it at the end of the day. We also have that factor of kind of getting 2 weeks of data in our locker after the game week 1 and game week 2 fixtures, because with game week 1 it's quite a small sample size, can't really make too many conclusions on that. So if Gundogan has a chance of starting, I'll rather just keep him, and then before game week 3 with 2 free transfers, we can then assess the situation. Other options that I have been looking at from a Gundogan replacement point of view have been Ismaila Sarr from Watford. He looked really good and has some good stats over game week 1, and considering that they did face Aston Villa, who aren't the worst team in the world, and they still managed to win, I do have some faith with Sarr over the upcoming game weeks, and I think that he can get some FPL returns. Probably the conservative option to go for would have been a Rafinha, but there has been this kind of news of him potentially missing a game week 4, game week 5 after the Brazilian international qualifiers, and that news does include quite a lot of options. We have Mo Salah who's going to be playing for Egypt in the African qualifiers, and I honestly can't see him missing that unless he really does pick up an injury. I'm not talking about those fake injuries before the international break. I'm talking about a real injury that will keep him out of that Egyptian qualifier games. But there has been some news about it that apparently because he's playing the first game in that red zone country, he should be fine for game week 4 if he manages to make it back to Liverpool on time. So maybe just keep this news in your mind. That's another kind of reason maybe to keep your transfers for game week 3, because we will definitely have more news by then, and that should hopefully allow us to make some more informed FPL decisions. So finally, going on to our game week 2 team, and as you can see, the first thing you're probably going to be noticing is the captaincy. So let's address that right off the bat so you guys don't lose concentration and don't get to that part of the video. But Bruno Fernandes is currently my captain going into game week 2, but honestly for myself it's a real 50-50 between him and Salah. I think both of them will end up returning. It's just kind of predicting who's going to score the most points, and that's why I think I'm looking at Bruno Fernandes, to be honest, because I think in terms of the high ceiling, I honestly think that against Southampton, United will score more goals than Liverpool will against Burnley. I understand that there is kind of the home factor to it, and I perfectly understand that, So I think both those two kind of cancel each other out, and I think both these options will do well. That's why I said it's a 50-50 for me. And come that deadline stream on Saturday afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you guys are around the world, I wouldn't be surprised if you see me revert kind of back to Mo Salah. But I have been on Bruno Fernandes since kind of game week 1 commenced. To me, it was the best fixture on paper, and after seeing that performance of United against Leeds, I kind of was a little bit reassured by that performance, because I think overall Liverpool against Norwich didn't look as good as maybe people are kind of putting them out to be. So starting off with the defense, we've got kind of the exact same team. It's kind of the exact same team overall. So I'll just kind of bounce through the options and talk about the fixtures and what I'm kind of anticipating or expecting out of these FPL players. So starting off in goal, we've got Sanchez. So I'm really hoping, because this is a home fixture, that they can be a little more defensively strong than they were against Burnley. And I'm hoping for a clean sheet against Watford. And I think this might kind of nullify the Ismail Assar effect. So I'm really hoping that they do have a quality kind of fullback to kind of counter him, because Matt Target had a really tough time against Sarr, and that actually managed to get him subbed at half time, which you don't see too often in football nowadays. We have Luke Shaw, who I think can keep a clean sheet in this one. We do have the new signing Armstrong from Southampton, who managed to get on the mark in their fixture in game week 1. So I'm hoping that he manages to stay quiet and Luke Shaw can maybe keep up a clean sheet, or maybe get an attacking return that we've all been hoping for. We then have Tsimikas and Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I think will both start against Burnley, and I'm really hoping for a clean sheet. It'll be kind of a nice goodbye present for Tsimikas to our FPL sides if he can manage to keep a clean sheet this week. He might play against Chelsea next week, but I think that we might have some rotation there, and maybe they'll go more conservative with a James Milner at that left back position. In terms of attacking returns, there always is a chance of attacking returns, but usually on those set pieces, Burnley are a little bit better than most sides from a defensive point of view. So I'm not really hoping for a clean sheet assist from any of these two, but I still do think they can get some attacking returns, maybe from a counter attack, or maybe from a cross in from the left or the right. The midfield department has some really good fixtures this week. I mean, just look at those fixtures for my midfield 5. Absolutely superb. Starting off with Buendia, I'm going to kind of talk about Buendia and Danny Ings as a collective, because they have the same fixture. So really am excited about this double up for Aston Villa against Newcastle, because we kind of saw West Ham last week. Although it was a home fixture for Newcastle, maybe that's why they were a little bit more attacking than usual. I do still think that Aston Villa can get on the receiving end of a couple of goals and assists, and that's why I'm kind of hoping that Buendia and Danny Ings, I kind of return the patience I've had in them and the faith that I had in game week 1 by putting them in my own team. We'll then move on to Gundogan, who I've already spoken about quite a bit, but as I said, if there's kind of a slither of hope that he's going to start against Norwich, or at least feature, I will still be keeping the German midfielder in my kind of FPL team, because I think that that's going to equal FPL points, to be honest. We'll then go on to Bruno Fernandes and Greenwood, and I have seen some people kind of mention Greenwood as a potential differential captain if you guys do want to go for it, and I can kind of understand why, because if you're looking at Bruno Fernandes as a captaincy option, you got to look at his teammates. And I mean, if Greenwood's going to start out of position as a striker, that's going to be quite good value for money in my opinion, and I think that you can look at him, but I'd probably focus on Fernandes, to be honest, if you want to go for a United option. We then have Mo Salah playing at home, which he usually does quite well in, so that's the only thing I'm kind of contemplating is who to captain this week, and unfortunately I think it's going to come down to the wire and down to that deadline stream. The final player in the starting 11 is going to be Antonio, who faces Leicester. And I said this kind of in the ultimate guide, is that I think this game will be quite a close one, and I can't see too many goals scored. So if Antonio can manage to get an assist or a goal, I'll be over the moon with that, as my expectation from this week isn't too high. Finally, on the bench, Foster, he's not going to start. We saw Bachmann is now the number 1 for Watford. We also have Ayling, who might have to come off my bench if Gundogan doesn't feature against Norwich and we don't make that transfer. And then finally, Omar Badmadeli at 4.0. It didn't feature in game week 1 because I do think he was sick, so we might see him feature against Man City. But I'm not really expecting too much, to be honest, from the 4.0 defender against a Man City side that I think will score a couple of goals at the Etihad. The final player is going to be Johansson on our bench there for Spurs. Now, it has been kind of said that he's going to be starting the UEFA Conference League game for Spurs tonight. So it might be a little bit of a feature in the upcoming game weeks. Who knows? If Harry Kane leaves the team, maybe Scarlett can manage to get a feature. And that'll be quite an interesting option there at 4.5 in the forward department. But this is basically going to wrap up the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like it if you did. And subscribe if you're new and have not subscribed yet. The comment I want you guys to drop is who you're going to be captaining. I want to see some Man City options there, because I think that fixture is definitely the best one on paper. But are you a team Bruno, a team Salah? What side of the fence are you kind of sitting on? As I mentioned, please pay attention to the deadline stream on Saturday morning, evening, night, wherever you are in the world, because we will be finalizing our own team selection going into that game week 2 deadline. I'll be signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.